There you go.
All right, guys, welcome to the strategic planning meeting for December. It is December 6th, 2022. Meeting is starting at 7:33 p.m. Brute, I know you have you put out the agenda, so I don't know if we had any questions or things we had to discuss from the minutes from last month.
Nope, I reviewed the minutes. They got posted the other day. I don't have any questions. It was a recap from the November 8th meeting that Ms. Longnecker led.
Cool. On you.
All right. So tonight, like we had done in the past, I wanted to start with a first reading look like we did the last time, where I'm going to open up some breakout rooms. I'm going to allow everybody to choose whatever room they would like to jump into to kind of discuss one of the policies that are posted to board docs in the public portal for just some overview, like to summarize with one another, bring back any questions or comments or areas of concern that you might have about the policy so that we can go back and revisit some of those. This meeting is actually happening earlier than usual, and our board meeting is happening earlier than usual this month. So my plan for the first readings to be presented next week would be to take any comments or feedback from this group to discuss we have on our leadership meeting tomorrow to the agenda to review these policies and to discuss any feedback that comes out tonight, to finish and make sure that the solicitor's legal review is done by the end of the week so that they can be then posted to the public agenda for first reading at the scheduled board meeting on Tuesday. All of the policies this month that are coming up for first reading are all community-based policies. So there is the public complaint procedures, which is very similar to our current policy, but just having a board docs update. The visitors policy, which again is very similar to our current policy, but receiving a board docs update. A new policy within the board docs community container titled Relations with Parents and Guardians, which really just outlines the school's responsibilities to communicate and to build relationships with our students, parents, and guardians. There is news media relations, the non-school organizations, groups, and individuals. That's about participation and access to the school, sort of like not necessarily solicitation, but information distribution related to non-school organizations. There is coordination with school districts and IUs. That is a policy basically just stating that we will coordinate with our authorizing school districts as well as our local intermediate unit for services and coordination. And then the last policy is our volunteer policy. This received a board docs update since our 2019 policy was passed. It is again very similar to our current policy, and it's just getting sort of a facelift. So for the next, I would say like 15 minutes or so, I'm going to open up all of the rooms. All of these policies are posted into board docs public document area. So if you didn't have a chance to peruse them real quickly. Again, I apologize for the lateness of getting some of those out to everybody with when the board meeting was getting rescheduled for this month. But you can take about 15 minutes just to peruse and go through, and then I'll bring people back. And then if you were in the room, I will ask just for like a quick summary or somebody to share any questions or concerns while I take notes, and then we'll bring them back to the administrative discussion and review tomorrow. Any questions about any of that? All right, so I am opening the rooms now. You should have the ability to move yourself to any of the rooms that you would like to go to, and I will set a timer and then announce when we will be looking to come back to the main room. Thank you.
Hey Brian, can you hear me?
Yep.
It's Lindsay. I don't know if you saw my chat.
I see you now.
Okay, yeah, it's me.
No problem.
Do you have anything different you want me to do for the minutes with the breakout rooms? Last time I literally just wrote that we were in breakout rooms. I was on Zoom,
Nope,
so I couldn't, or I was watching the recording.
You don't need to take notes from every small group. It would probably just be a quick summary of anything that happens once everybody comes back.
Okay, great. I'll just wait in this main area and then I'll take whatever is important when everybody comes back.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Hey, Donna, I have a question, and this was an outstanding one that I was waiting to hear back from Stacy on, and maybe you're the better one to ask it.
Sure.
For our volunteer, I didn't see this in our previous volunteer policy. So for our volunteers, does our liability insurance coverage cover volunteers while
do.
they are okay? I thought
Yeah.
so. I was look, but I left that as sort of an outstanding question within that policy.
As long as they follow the protocols and they go through Raptor and then
Yep.
they do, if
And
they
it's
have
like
to
if
be
they're
in-
on site in their role volunteering, that they would be covered.
Correct. We count all of our volunteers. We have to report them every year. So it's under our student insurance policy, but yeah, they are covered. And the only caveat is if we don't screen them or they get into the school and we don't ask them to leave or they haven't provided their license and background clearances, then there could be liability.
Great. Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
You're welcome. I know I looked over the policies and I'm like, okay, look familiar. There are a couple of things, but nothing that I haven't already seen. I didn't have any questions.
Yeah, they were mostly all facelifts.
Pretty much. They look a lot more professional, I'll tell you that.
All right, I'm gonna bring everybody back.
Quiet girls. I'm on the computer.
All right, looks like everybody's starting coming back. So again, like I had mentioned before it, I think the majority of these were facelift policies, and may not necessarily garner a ton of conversation. But I'll just start at the very beginning with the public complaint procedures. Anybody in that group who wanted to just quickly summarize and then point out any questions that they would like in back for discussion and with administration before final drafts are posted to the board meeting agenda for next week.
Sure. This is Weaver. We went through like you said, the public complaint procedure policy. So basically what it's saying is it outlines a procedure if there are complaints regarding board policy, administrative procedures, programs, personnel operations, and facilities. So the first step in that is to address the complaint with the school employee who is most directly involved in the situation. If the person has the concern or complaint, I guess isn't satisfied with how that kind of worked out, they move into a first level, I guess the first step of the process. in which they reach out to the building principal, administrator, or designee with a written complaint. If it's not worked out, then there's a second level, which then goes to the CEO. And then after that, the third level, which would go to the board. Then there's a section in there about a complaint procedure for federal programs. So similar
I
process.
thought you'd like that.
Yeah, I did like that. Thank you. Similar process for that it's documented, written complaint. Here's what my concerns are about how we spend federal money, and then our response to it. And then there's a last section on here, complaints regarding individual board members. So I guess if someone had a complaint about an individual board member, they would first go to that individual board member to try and resolve it first. Then if it didn't work out, I guess, and the parties involved weren't happy with the outcome, then that board member would consider bringing it to the entire board. So those were some of the things. And I guess the big question we had in our group was, is this policy and the procedures that are nestled in it true for every complaint situation that we come across? Or is it high level things? So like if a parent has a complaint such as, I don't know, a student got a lunch detention for pushing somebody on the playground, would they go through this process?
Yeah, I mean, I don't
Karen
think
had
that
a
they would.
complaint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that the first level is deal with the employee who would have maybe given the lunch detention. If they don't like that, then it goes to the building principal or administrator, and then you can have a conference. If they don't like that, then they bring it to the next level. I think it kind of is just trying to outline the maybe you don't jump right to Kristen with your complaint about a lunch detention before having conversations with all of the other sort of levels of the organization.
That's a nice thought. I was saying, when exactly is the level of my attorney talks to your attorney, because there's a lot of that's thrown around sometimes when we have a complaint. But I think I'm assuming if at the level of the board, if we're at that level and we're not agreeing or understanding, that is my attorney will talk to your attorney.
Sure.
Unless they jump the procedure.
Right. Or I mean, I think that just naturally, if somebody's not happy with maybe a decision that you in your position make, I'm sure that they always then say, well, I'm going to email the board. Right.
Right.
And that's just kind of like a natural, okay, you kind of naturally followed the progression of what this was supposed to be anyways.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. And it does.
But I think it's more of the understanding of the second and third level and board positions to say, okay, I've received this complaint. Have you gone through this process before? Like, so if, Blaze and Charity get an email that says, I'm upset with something, as board members, I'm upset with something. Here's my grievance and my complaint. The response back would hopefully then be like, did you, speak to the employee? Have you spoken to the principal? Have you addressed it with X, Y, and Z to make sure that sort of hierarchy of communication occurs?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's also outlined in there what should be in the written complaint at every level. So that's something too that could be reiterated with everybody, what that looks like, and then the written response follow-up after each conversation too. That's all.
And I think the conversation that we've been having about the like updated who to go to for what and the communication flow of things will help supplement this policy too.
I brought that up too. I think that's a great time to do that.
All right. Visitors and volunteers are always fun.
I can talk about that one. So in looking at the visitor and volunteer policy, essentially it designated guest volunteers versus more consistent volunteers, and the requirements such as background checks, that the CEO has the right to choose or deny volunteer in the building, and that there's a list of consent forms that they have to complete before they're allowed access. We can discontinue volunteer service at any time, and there should be a procedure to implement the policy to manage the selection, use, and supervision of volunteers. The only comment that we had was making sure that there's a clear understanding of a guest volunteer versus a visitor. I know that the way that the policy is written, it states that the visitor is a role that's less substantial. But the guest volunteer is things like career day, collecting tickets at events, even if they don't have direct contact with students. My understanding is that they still need to complete all of those records in order to be a volunteer. So it might be worth just looking at some examples of where we have volunteers come in and whether they would need those certifications.
So get in the going to back to volunteers and visitors. So in the volunteer policy, about halfway down, there's a line that states guest volunteers shall be required to follow the procedures for charter school visitors. So the certification section for clearances only applies to volunteer positions that fall within the position volunteer category. So if you're somebody who is like a career day or collecting tickets at an events or volunteering to serve, soft pretzels at the play, something like that, that is a guest volunteer. They don't need to have background clearances on file. They would not have direct supervision. They wouldn't have unsupervised supervision of students. So they would follow the visit model. Does that help clarify it?
Yeah, and I see the line that you're referring to. That does make more sense. Thank you.
And then in our current packet that is still valid and will still be valid after the policy update, there's a table that was created the last time that kind of gives more specific school-based examples of, like, if you're in this volunteer position, you do need clearances, and if you're in this volunteer position, you wouldn't need clearances. I did catch one mistake on the PDF document that's submitted to the agenda. It stated that the child abuse, criminal, and FBI fingerprinting needed to be done every 60 months. Our policy is 36. So I did update that in the board docs draft.
We didn't have anything else.
Okay. Relations, parents, and guardians. Again, that one's pretty straightforward. I don't know if anybody even went down into that one.
Yeah, I can talk about that. So this one was about parents and guardians keeping staff apprised of changes in the home situation that affect the student's conduct and performance, as well as the responsibility of parents and guardians to support and encourage their child's career. I guess it's not that we got caught up in it. We kind of got caught up in what were they called? Parent-teacher conferences, basically. And if there's any way that we can not force, but highly encourage the parents to come and do that. Right now, the ones that we just finished, we kind of get the same parents all the time, and they're usually the parents that don't necessarily need to be there. Not that we don't want to see them and touch base with them. But if there's any way that we can, the second half of this about the responsibility to support and encourage the child's career in their school really talks about making sure that the parents do that. And we're not really getting, I personally had like 6 conferences. So we're not really getting the pushback at the higher levels of the parents that we really need to see. So we kind of got caught up in a little bit of that. I don't know if that's part of really the policy though.
I mean, that's probably the internal operations of what we want to do to try to encourage participation. From the policy standpoint, you had like two major sections. It was board directs the school to do these things, and then the board encourages parents to do these things. So it's just kind of outlining that relationship back and forth. News media relations. Anybody have any feedback or questions? Okay, that basically just says that the board designates the CEO as the communications representative for the board and for the school. And then what some specific responsibilities of that would be. Very straightforward. Oh, and there is one portion of that about the submission of photographs to news media and permission for news media representatives to photograph the charter schools, like subjects, personnel, or students, that all needs to be authorized ahead of time, which it really does fall under and in alignment with the elections that parents make during their FERPA and privacy record statements each back to school year. But that is included in that news media relations policy as well. Non-school organizations and groups and individuals. This one again had to deal with the dissemination of non-school related information and materials. Did no one go down to that room? That's okay. I can summarize it real quick. So this policy defines what a non-school organization, group, or individual is. It discusses when they are allowed on campus, as well as puts guidelines as well as restrictions on the dissemination of non-school based materials, whether that's print, like digital media, anything like that to students, and the process for which that would need to be reviewed or considered. This does not apply to student expression or the dissemination of materials from student organizations and groups approved by the school. That's a separate policy. But this is really for non-school based organizations that are seeking to share or disseminate information out to school personnel or students, like through the school entity. Coordination with school districts and IU units.
So this was just a quick one. The first part was when we have to give an annual report to our charter and district each year. And then every the last year of our charter, we have to make sure to renew our charter by presenting stuff to the board, which eventually has to be
What's
approved.
that date, Kristen?
Is it the annual, or are you talking about the when the charter renew?
No,
April.
You're messing with, all right.
He's messing with me.
Yep, I figured that. He'll probably ask me to say yesterday a couple times.
Uh-huh.
Yep. So that's pretty much that, and ultimately we after
The letter goes out October 1st, just to clarify. April is the charter letter, but October 1st is the letter.
The next part is with the IU, we're able to receive services from them as long as the services are not charged at a higher rate than any of the school districts. And then it's about release of information to any for any students that go to another school system that were either a previous student, we have to send it to them within 10 school days. Or if for some reason, for some unforeseen reason that the school closes, we have to send it for all information.
Matt, I haven't looked at that as reviewed. Does it say anything about the Avon policy? Does it refer to that at all in there?
I did not see Avon in there. I don't know, Megan, if you saw anything. It just referred to charter the entire time.
We should probably put Avon policy referral in there just to have it aligned to, you know what I mean? So that if anybody needed to look back, they make sure that they're aligned, or at least our dates are jiving with all of their dates. I haven't compared, so I'll look at that.
The dates are just that are the charter school law ranges. So like, well, we'll notify the chartering school district in writing between July 1 and October 1st.
Did you compare and contrast though their new policy that they did like a year or two ago with this one at all? I wasn't sure. I haven't done it.
I mean, I know I didn't. I believe that's more of their exercising policy for authorization of charter schools. Where
Okay.
this one is really just saying you're gonna these are the two things that we have to do. We have to request for renewal between the PDE statute timeline, like the July 1 to October 1st, that we got to submit the annual report to the chartering school district by August 1st.
Yeah.
And that, there's the IU market pricing statement in there that we
Okay.
can work with the IU, and then the transfer of student records. It also aligns with our release of records process. So that 10 days is school code statute and is what we follow with our release of records process.
Okay.
And I think that's it. We covered volunteers and visitors kind of together. So any other questions? I wrote a couple things down while people were speaking, just to make sure that we bring up and talk again tomorrow about before making final edits for next Tuesday. All right. Next on the agenda. So I wanted to loop back and just discuss a little bit and share. I know Stacy Barno was present at the ISM presentation right before Thanksgiving. This was one of our strategic plan or comp plan goals. So I wanted to just give a quick update and summarize a little bit of what was shared on that Friday for Blaze and for charity. Blaze was worked with the school, and we had done this a couple times. So we basically contracted with ISM back in the spring and in the summer for a more comprehensive schedule analysis of State Road with sort of the growth of our student population, some additional plant management based constraints. And when I say that, I mean things like the gym and the cafeteria, as well as with the building project on the horizon. We wanted to come back to the concept of sort of our operating schedule and see if there again is a way that we can look at the efficiency of our time, the number of transitions that we have, how do we work our lunchroom, how do we effectively move through one gymnasium, how do we share staff between our different divisions, and can we do that more effectively? So ISM beginning in, really it was like the end of August, beginning of September, started a pretty lengthy document analysis. So I gathered together a number of documents and Excel spreadsheets and metrics on our previous schedules and narratives about how transportation works and our relationship with TCHS and FTE numbers for all of our staff and how many staff we have at different certification levels and different education levels and where they teach across different sections and the room utilization of our building and what percentage of the day is each of our rooms being utilized. So they took all of that information and they did an analysis of what our schedule looked like and how we were operating. And then they did a student survey that I have the results from, and I'm going to share that with the administration and the board. They did student focus groups as a follow-up to that. They did staff focus groups across all of our State Road divisions. And then they did a parent focus group as well, asking questions that, ranged from homework to testing to how tired kids are when they get home from school. So their focus group questions were pretty wide. So they gave us, and then they came out on Friday, I believe it was the 17th of November, and did a big presentation that spoke a lot about theory to get people thinking about the theory and the research behind time and scheduling in school. What's some of the research-backed practices that are proven to sort of increase rigor and increase durable learning and increase transfer skills, and increase the efficiency of what your schedule looks like, because time is money. And they did a big presentation, and then have also provided us sort of an analysis and future models that could be looked at to be implemented. And then after all of this, we have sort of a retainer with ISM now moving forward through the continued evaluation and sort of implementation of whatever we end up coming to as a school in terms of the future schedule. So he went through a good analysis of what our current schedule looks like. I'm just going to kind of go through some of these, pointed out a lot of what our constraints are. And I don't think those constraints are like surprising to anybody. Our cafeteria is very difficult to manage, both just from the number of students that we have to get through it, as well as sort of the way the serving line is set up. The amount of food that can be prepped in our prep area, that's a constraint for how we have to run our day. Our gym, we have a single gym right now. With the addition of a new building and a new gym, that allows a little bit more flexibility, and and ISM took that sort of space, the square footage increase that we are expecting in the building in the fall of 2025, fingers crossed, into some of their models. They looked at the number of transitions that we had, how we needed certain things in our schedule to line up in order for us to share staff across our specials programs. They looked at how tech runs, as well as sort of when our kids eat. Like our 7th and 8th graders eat at 10:14 in the morning. Is that the best time for that age group of students to eat? Is 12:38 the best time for our high school students to eat? And how all of this works. We went through, this is sort of, we looked at the percentage of time that each of our rooms are being used, and we've sort of maxed out all of our rooms throughout the day. So if you're seeing, when you look at this slide, if you basically see 75 or above, that's kind of a maxed out room, being that we have really unit-based lunches where all of middle school and all of high school eat at the same time. So high school teachers, their rooms are not utilized during high school lunch. So that yields a lower percentage. And then we try very hard to give our teachers their room available to them during their prep period. So that's typically 2 out of your 6 periods right there, of your 2 out of your 8 periods right there, that your room is dedicated to a non-instructional function. And then they highlighted some of the themes that came out of these surveys, as well as the focus groups to try to look at. We reviewed some of our student experience profile scores from their surveys. Again, he went through a lot of the comments and feedback. I will share again that the individual who was working with us had nothing but positive things to say about our students who were in the focus group sessions, that they gave very good, thoughtful feedback and were very respectful, which is always nice to hear. So what he then came to, and I know I'm going through these, is really looking at our cycle days and how we cycle through our cycle days, and then coming through and having some conversations about our time and the number of transitions that we have. What he was saying were match points throughout our day, and it was how many times we can have our elementary, our middle and our high school schedules match up in terms of time throughout the day, so that it allowed for the easy transfer of both students, middle school students who are coming up into high school classes, elementary students coming up to middle school math classes or things like that, as well as the transfer of our staff between different programs in our elementary, middle, and high school without it being a serious constraint or a model in which sort of handcuffs the flexibility that you would want with being able to move back and forth teachers. One of the program models that he shared was this 6-day, 75-minute block period. Again, the spreadsheets and models that he gave us about 10 to like 12 different iterations of schedules. This was the one that he believed, with the research and what we were trying to accomplish, as well as the feedback from staff and from parents and from students, kind of worked the best. So it was basically looking at a 6-day cycle that broke up our middle and high school into 75-minute periods, and then was able to look at where, and those red arrows are the match points that I was speaking about, of where our schedules with 4 to 6, 7 and 8, and high school match up to allow for the sharing of staff and students. Within this schedule, he also spoke a lot about variation with when specials and when periods or teaching blocks happen. That the concept of, if I get scheduled math first period of the day from my counselor, but I'm not good as a student, like math, I'm not awake yet. I'm going to suffer. My math class is going to suffer because maybe I'm not a morning math person, or conversely, even from a teacher perspective, like some people are morning people. They're more pleasant in the morning, and the people who get that teacher in the morning have a much more pleasant experience than one who may be tired at the end of the day, and has that group of students every period, 8th period. And Blaze, I think you can think of like back to what 8th period looked like, right? Like that's a difficult period to teach after all of high school eats lunch 7th period. So really looking at trying to mix and rotate things. So presented a middle school and high school rotation model, taking into consideration the technical school constraints, and went through some examples of what that would look like. Examples, and mapped out what our elementary grade level classes and schedules would look like in this model as well, so that they all sort of were able to sit on top of each other and the puzzle pieces fit, as well as including rotation within our elementary and flipping sort of math and ELA blocks, as well as when specials might happen. He presented some non-rotations. If the rotating of periods through was not something we were able to accomplish, or was not going to be feasible, provided some non-rotation models that worked, and lined up all of the schedules. And then another sort of out of the box one was rotating by trimester, so that if we weren't, maybe if rotating every other day was a little bit too much or too difficult to implement with some of the constraints that we have, like the technical college schedule, potentially restructuring it where students' periods and teacher periods move throughout their day, move throughout the year on a trimester basis. Gave us a lot of examples of where lunch could occur across the different divisions, and what that would do to, if I moved middle school lunch from where it is in one model to later in the day, how that would affect 4th, 5th, and 6th grade lunch and recess. So did go into accounting for all of that, as well as trying to display aggregate seat time, because I think that this is something that and I know after the meeting, spoke with some teachers about just the idea of aggregate seat time and the need for how many minutes do I have kids for, and am I losing total aggregate minutes of a period in this particular model versus the 8-period day that we have now. So he did point out a little bit of math and spoke about sort of the psychology behind the number of transitions that you have and how much wasted time sometimes happens in our periods when you have lots of transitions, kids coming in, having to settle, get out their homework, understand what's going on in the period. Then the last 6 minutes are, I'm tuned out. I'm already thinking about what's going to be coming up next. I'm already packing up my bag. And then, if those transitions are happening 6-7 times a day, how much of our actual instructional day is devoted to sort of that lost gray time at the beginning and end of periods. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to dive a little bit more into some of the recommendations and models. I actually have started to try to see if I can play and take this year's teaching schedule and this year's student requests and just do like a hypothetical. Would this work in any of these schedule scenarios? Going to start to build out some recommendations and then be following up with teachers and department chairs on some model recommendations to continue to get feedback from the staff on things that could work, things that can't work. And I'm going to move through the next sort of like 35, 40 days that way. If we were, and I think that this is a lot to bite off, but if we were going to try to make any type of change into the 23-24 school year, I think then you're talking about professional development schedules needing to be established on, what does this look like in our classrooms? How does this change pedagogy? How does this change assessment? How does our teaching change? That would also need to be looked at and in coordination with our principals and teacher leads. So that was a lot. I'm gonna be sharing this presentation with the board so that you guys can go through it a little bit more and see what came out of their analysis and recommendations. Any questions either from Blaze or Charity or any staff who were there that want to chime in and discuss anything? I think, nothing's set in stone, obviously. I think there's still a lot. I'll tell you, like right afterwards, our cafeteria manager, Nikki, was like, love the ideas, but here's all of the constraints that we have in the cafeteria. I think there are areas that we need to go back to and start to tease out of how do we make positive change, but also operate within the constraints that we have in certain areas.
Brian, were these recommendations based off the construction of the new building?
So he looked at trying to do it where there's a couple models where he said, like, you could do this now. Like if you did this, you could do it now. It might be difficult in your cafeteria, but he built it as if the building didn't happen. Act of God, the building doesn't happen, and you're stuck with still where you are right now. He wanted to build models so that we could implement it next year or the year after if we wanted to. But then he gave examples within those models where, here's what the schedule would look like with your single gym. But if you had a second gym and this gym became the existing gym within the main building became sort of multi-purpose in gym space and extra cafeteria seating, then you'd be able to do this. So there were like sort of release valves within the schedule models that said, and then if you gained these extra classrooms, then it would look like this, and you could hire this many more teachers, or and then this would allow for more, variation within your math schedule.
Yeah, that would be my second question. Did he say, or do you know at this point, would his changes require hiring of additional staff? And second, would it possibly limit the number of offerings of student classes?
So the kids would actually be able to take one extra class. So what he did is in all of his models, he got lunch out of in the secondary classes in 7th through 12th grade. He got lunch out of it being a period within the day. So it was an isolated period, and gave 8 period containers for classes. So the kids would really have an 8-period day, not a 7-period day, or middle school having really a 6-period day with lunch and Wolfpack hour. But for teachers, in order to have a prep period on both days, they would still teach 6 of 8 periods, because you would need a prep block on like day 1 and a prep block on day 2. So it doesn't increase the number of periods that teachers teach, but would increase the number of potential offering block carriers that kids could take. So you may then be able to see an increase in enrollment in some of your elective classes. We talked about where if we increase dual enrollment release like that then allows that release to happen in the afternoon a little bit easier. So that was kind of where that ended up sitting. Like, it's not extra on in the model that you gave. It was still a 6-period max 6-period responsibility on teacher schedules, which is what they have now. And then a potential max of 8 available for students. That doesn't take into consideration if you add like an extra lab block in there for AP Sciences, if you choose to do that, or some of those little nuances to some class schedules. But it does allow for an 8-period day, credit opportunity for kids over the 2 days. Which I think then
it's
goes into
great
a little bit of like the variability. Like if there's an extra period, there's more combinations that can be run of where things happen, which then would hopefully lower the number of conflicts that kids run into when they have to make a decision of what class they want to take. Sorry, I cut you off, Charity.
I was just going to say, I think it's great to have the information. I think it would be great to get some teacher feedback on what if it's feasible, which ones are and which ones just seem unfeasible at this point without the new building, and see what we can go from there. Now, was this with any of the start time changing? Because I know that's been something previously we've discussed.
So he built this. Basically, if you do anything with start time, you can just either like shift the schedule down or elongate it, or if you if you start later but extend the day in total instructional minutes, you can just grow the periods.
Right.
Or if you just say we're going to start 30 minutes later, then you just kind of like shift the whole schedule down 30 minutes. He said that it because we have everybody at State Road arrive at the same time, then that was very easy to kind of just shift. Any other feedback, questions?
I think one of the, I guess, interesting things that he talked about was the amount of time, especially on a campus that's big like ours, is the amount of time it takes students to get to class. And then, me being down in STEM, like kids will come late, coming all the way from, Miss Abernathy's room at the end of 300 building. And that we lose time on the ends of those classes, either on the front end or on the back end. And, these kind of schedules with 75 minutes cut down on that. And of course, the new building also cuts down on that, but we would also have to consider the fact that from the new building, they would still have to go back to the original building with cafeteria and the art hall and anything, the drama or whatever else that goes up on there. So it's good that there's less periods and there's less transition time and you can get into those classes for a longer amount of time. But I did think it was interesting how much, and it's true, how much time is just lost in the transition.
Yeah, when he totaled it up, it was kind of like, wow, that is a lot of time. All right, next on the agenda, I just wanted to give an update. At the last meeting, we shared sort of a rough timeline of what we wanted to do in the spring for the portrait of a graduate. So right before the holiday, I'm going to send out an initial request for parents to that's going to go out to all parents that if they want to join the a committee that will work through the portrait of a graduate work that we would look to have starting in February. I'll resend that out again when we return from break. And then I have another one that I'm going to be sending out that is going to start to try to collect, and then maybe the board can help with this, a couple individuals within the community that are business related community partners, as well as I'm going to leverage Chrissy Simpkins to try to get one of our state troopers on sort of a panel to talk about in our first session sort of some of what are the employability skills, what is people within the community and within the industry looking to see sort of students leave high school with in terms of skills and competencies. And that's going to be sort of the first committee session in February. But that survey is going to be going out right before the break to start to get some interest on that. The next item is the communications review. So we also have scheduled for this year, in partnership with the IU, a communications review of the school. They are scheduled to meet with our administrative team the 4th of January, I believe it is. And then they are going to be coming to our January 10th strategic planning committee meeting to discuss their process and what they are looking to do in coming in and again, doing some focus groups and some meetings with parents and staff about the school's communication, basically how we communicate, how people want information, what does our sort of branding look like? Is our frequency too much? Is it at the wrong times? Is it, just right? So they're gonna go through, and then they'll give us some recommendations. And then on the back end of that process is a branding workshop about school branding and visibility within the community and things like that. So that's going to be happening in the spring. That'll start in January, and then I believe 2 representatives from the IU will be at our next month's meeting to discuss that process with everybody. And then last on the list for tonight, I just wanted to revisit and share, to real quickly go through some of the updates that were being put into the strategic planning tracking sheet that we were going through. And if anybody else is on the call and wants to speak to anything that's in this, you're more than welcome to. But there's been some updates to these. Like, we're starting that portrait of a graduate process. We have, I know Ryan has been working through our SEL. We have those half days this year, which was to meet one of those goals, and our PBIS fidelity within tier 2. We're working. We have a new more streamlined process for enrollment that's rolling out this year. That we're in progress of. We have our special ed audit and cyclical monitoring that we are gearing up for, and that's a major initiative for this year. All of our IT infrastructure projects that were on the list to be done this year are completed or near completion. So again, I don't know if anybody else is on that wants to update anything. There has been a lot of movement from either not started to in progress or in progress to completed. All right, if there's nothing left, then that's all I had for an agenda tonight.
Anybody else have any questions, concerns before we go? Once, twice. All right, let's call it 8:40 p.m. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Enjoy those last 2 weeks before Christmas break. I know they can be tough, but hang in there. You got some light at the end of the tunnel. So hope everybody has a good night.
Good night, everyone.